Good afternoon, family, and welcome to episode 11 of Critical Sense Making Sessions, facilitated by yours truly, Revolutionary Rika. Today's topic is finance. Today's guest is Kendra Willis. She is an Oakland native who is passionate about educating and equipping all on the need to be more diligent with saving, growing, and protecting your finances. Kendra, tell us a little bit more about who you are in one word to describe how you're showing up.
Okay, cool. First of all, let me just thank you for blessing me with the opportunity to share information with your audience on today. So, just a little bit about me. I was born and raised in East Oakland, California. I am what I like to call a financial wellness coach and a financial educator. I have a passion for helping people, specifically people that look like me, to really become their own money managers. And so, how I'm showing up today, I'm showing up as the money doctor and I'm showing up dignified.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you for agreeing to be on. And I want to now share our opening activity. And so, women empowerment. And I know you're all about women empowerment. At
Yes.
the end, I want you to share some of the Facebook groups that you created around financial education as well as women empowerment. And so, for this one, we were just talking prior to the show around social media and Facebook and all of these things. And so I often think about the what we all experienced in high school,
Hmm.
what's happening in the world today, and we see a lot of this on social media. So the first part of this says, "Mean girls go far in high school, kind women go far in life." And then on the bottom, "What you say about other people says way more about you than the people you talk about." And so that when I saw these two on the internet, it had me think about high school, and it had me think about the way that some people engage in social media with high school behavior. And so I just
Right.
wanted to see how this resonates with you and just your thoughts around these two quotes.
Well, you know what the funny thing is that I'm in my early 40s, and so I was in high school in the 90s. But I have daughters who were in high school just recently. I have an 18 and a 20-year-old, and the world has changed so much, over the past 20, 30 years that it's almost ridiculous. I look at social media, I look at, like you said, people are behaving in a high school mannerism, but it's just really sad because we've come to a place where social media is just can be so disheartening to see how our older women have not yet evolved and are still carrying on with these crazy high school mannerisms. And it's almost a place where if you're regular, you just can't win,
Mm.
and you have to create or they're getting you to believe you have to create these false personas and these false identities. And we know it's not real,
Mhm.
but the younger people don't know it's not real. And so the younger people are doing so many things trying to fit in, and it's just not necessary. So people like you and I have to put a pause to this kind of crazy behavior and start teaching the real. And that's why I'm so appreciative for this particular platform. So we can show young women in particular, it's okay to be you, whoever that is. You don't have to adopt or adapt. And try and be something that you're not, just so that you can be accepted in society. You're gonna be all right regardless.
Yeah.
And yes, kind women do go far in life. I was one of the kind women in high school, and I'm working on going far.
I love it. Well, I thank you for sharing. And I just wanted to add, a lot of times, we're all in different places in our lives. We've all
Right,
experienced trauma and different things have happened. And a lot of times that keeps many people stagnant, right?
right.
And so what I've noticed also is that people who have, what I'm working on, I should say, I'm working on not judging people for where they're at.
Right.
But here's the thing, I'm not gonna now I may not engage in the way that they want me to engage because
Exactly.
I don't indulge in those activities. However, I'm not gonna judge you for where you are because you haven't done your inner work. I'm gonna
Right.
try to empower you and motivate you with words. But when I see that that's if it's not working, then maybe I'm not the person to do that. So then I'm
Exactly.
But I just find I wanted to share this because I look at the relationships between women on Facebook, the way they comment on each other, the way they some are a lot of them are positive, but then there's so much negative stuff. And so I
So
definitely,
much.
yeah, and I want our girls to know that, okay, you see these women on reality show. Yeah, they got the bag and they got the dues and they got the body and all this stuff, which is great, I guess, but do they know who they are?
Right.
I don't think so, because they're arguing with other women, competing with other women when this is not a competition.
Exactly. And it carries over from those reality shows into the Facebook platform or into other social media platforms. We are so judgmental and we are so hard on one another. I
Yeah.
mean, it comes down to I've seen women post a selfie and other women are commenting negatively on about their hair, about what they should have done, about why don't you have on makeup. I taught my girls that you need to show up in the skin you're in and be proud about that. You know what I'm saying? And I don't knock anybody who loves to be glamorous. But at the end of the day, sometimes you got to take that stuff off and figure
Yes.
out what's in your heart. You know, when that makeup comes off, when that hair comes off, who are you?
Mm,
Who is the inner you? And I think that just the social media platform has been such almost a negative influence
mhm,
on who we as Black women
mhm.
are turning into. You know, it's like we're losing our crowns because we're trying to be somebody that we're not, or because we're trying to live up to this image. And that will play into the finances as well. But we can get into that in a bit too.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your perspective on that. Just because that's one thing that I often, I just try to look at relationships. One thing, I'm a purpose pusher, and
Uh-huh.
I really try to push people to do whatever the inner work they need to do that's required, and that may mean mental health support, that may mean radical healing circles, or I don't know, it may mean a conversation with your family, but the only way that you're going to know what your purpose is to get all of that stuff that has blocked and stagnated you out of the way, so that you can actually
Exactly.
know, oh, who am I? Because I'm gonna tell you, I've got lost in this on this journey a couple times in trying to figure out who I am, and I feel like I'm really strong in knowing who I am. But
Right.
I had to pause and say, wait a minute, this don't look like you. So let's
Right.
pick it up. So
Right.
absolutely. Okay. So we'll move into our first set of questions. Tell us a little bit about life growing up in Oakland.
So I am a product of the early 80s. You know, I was born in the 79.
Mhm.
And so I grew up in an Oakland where everybody was fly, but people were united. You know what I mean? People were family. People knew who each other were. You knew who lived on every street. It's just like people in the city. Everybody knew which street everybody lived on. Everybody knew everybody's grandmother. You know, we had mother and father figures. During the time that I grew up. Now, I grew up also during the time where crack was becoming prevalent as well. So it was those dual truths and those dual things happening at the same time. We still had Big Mama, but we also had, a crack epidemic, and we were starting to lose the sense of family. My father left the house when I was 10 years old. And so it was just my mother as a single mom. And so I started recognizing the financial struggle very young, very young. I started recognizing, okay, this ain't the Cosby show. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I never saw a dead man on the ground when Bill Cosby walked out of his house, when their kids were on their way to school. But leaving out of my house sometimes, there would be people dead on the streets. Um, and it was just tough. It was tough because I always knew I wanted more. I always knew that there was something else there, but in my early childhood years, I just couldn't pinpoint it. Like, where's the divide? What am I missing?
Mhm.
How do I get to that Cosby-like lifestyle? How do I want the mother and the father. I want the good education. But it just seemed out of my reach for a good long while.
Mhm. Okay. And then thinking back on your childhood, when did you first learn? I heard you say you learned about it then, but was that like, how did you learn about it? Describe.
You mean about finances?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, actually, no, no, I didn't learn about finances. I knew that we were struggling.
Okay.
I knew that my mother was a single mother. I knew that things were harder than it should have been because my lifestyle didn't look like the lifestyle of the characters I watched on the television set. Um, One thing I fell in love with early on, probably about 5 or 6, was reading and books in the world of books and newspapers. And when I was 9 years old, I applied. I read in the newspaper that there was this audition for kids to work for KTVU Fox Channel 2 News as a kids reporter. So I applied and I got the job. And that's when I learned about finances. One, they were going to pay me. Okay, so I was a kid. I had to get in the journalist union. I had to become a union worker. I had to have a work permit, and there was all these things going on. But every day when I went to that news station, when I went down to Jack London,
Mhm.
and I saw the beautiful cars in the parking lot, and that was one thing. Because I also saw beautiful cars in the neighborhood from my uncles and all the local drug dealers, right? So it wasn't the cars. It was the sense of pride that people had when they walked in the door to that good job. I studied the news reporters. I shared a green room with them, and they talked different. They were dignified. They talked about 401k plans. They talked about IRAs. They talked about sending their children to private schools. And they talked, just watching, and I realized right then and there that dollars equal dignity.
Mm.
And honest dollars were a lot different than the type of dollars that I've been used to witnessing. And then we would go out and we would mentor at schools. We were these news reporter kids. There were 4 of us. Actually, there were 5 of us. And I was the only African American kid because there can only be one Black person. There could be a ton of white kids. There could be, and we would go out to these schools in Danville and Dublin and Livermore and all these schools, and the kids had good books. Their books weren't tattered. They weren't sharing. They had computers, individual computers. In 1989, that was unheard of, right? They had individual computers. They had all these things, and these were public schools. And I realized there is a great divide amongst the haves and the have-nots when it comes to finances. And I said, something has to be done. Why am I in a school where I'm sharing a book and it's missing page 35?
Mhm.
Why don't I have a computer? So it was right then and there that my first financial literacy education started happening. It was happening by watching. It was happening by living in 2 worlds. When I got out of school, I go straight to the news station with all these wealthy people who use big words and who wore suits and who talked about 401ks. And then I go home and there'd be a crackhead sitting on front of my yard, or somebody be dead outside, or we'd have to figure out what we were going to eat for dinner. So I was living in dual worlds, and I knew that the only thing that was separating my household from the people that worked at the news station was money. And that boiled down to a financial literacy education.
Mm.
My mom didn't have it. They knew something that she didn't know.
Mhm.
And I started trying to figure that out at 9. How do I get to that? What is it that they know that I don't know?
And I'm curious, I heard you say you guys went to Danville and Pleasanton and all these places. And I know KTVU sits in Oakland. So did you ever go to any schools in Oakland or in our local
No,
area?
no, we didn't. The only time we did events in Oakland is when we would do like the ice capades, right? So every 6 months, the ice capades would come to Oakland, and we'd stand up and we talk about how great of a city it was. And or the circus would come to town. Barnum and Bailey would come to town, and they'd have the little kids town news reporters. We'd run past and we'd wave. But no, we didn't. We were in Oakland, and we would take trips out of Oakland to, pass out candy or to promote our new TV shows that were our TV show lineups. And so we were catering to a market way back then that didn't look like me. I was just a sidebar. I was, I was the quota. You need a black kid too, so it can look diverse.
Mhm.
Um, and it was just sad because that's still the world we're living in. There is that great divide amongst the haves and the have-nots.
Absolutely. So, how was finance taught in the schools that you attended?
Oh, it wasn't taught. We learned math, simple math. That's it. There was no finance being taught. Um, I remember at one point in time, they were working on teaching us banking skills,
Mhm.
and that lasted all of a week. And I was like, okay, there you go. You count the quarters, you put them in a bank account. So it wasn't taught in schools, and it wasn't taught at home. And so if you're the average young person and you grew up in the same Oakland that I grew up in, and if your mother didn't understand how to balance her checkbook, right? Because there wasn't anything to balance. She had just enough for bills, right? So she paid her bills and that was it.
Mhm.
There was nothing extra. And if you weren't taught about it in school, then you're put into the world. What do you do? What do you know? So it's so easy to fall into the same trap that the people before you fell into, because there was no financial literacy education at all for me, other than the blessing of having that different world that I would, and that's a special circumstance. Most kids aren't going to score a job with a major news network. That doesn't happen. It didn't happen for any of my friends.
Mhm.
And it's easy sometimes, even now, to see the difference of where I ended up and where some of my good girlfriends ended up, people that I went to elementary school with. A lot of them are doing well, but it's just by the grace of God for me that I had that additional training and that additional education and those additional experiences, because it taught me early on that that world did exist, that I could control my money instead of allowing my money to control me. I didn't have to live paycheck to paycheck.
Mm. So I'm curious about the other kid journalist that was in the program with you.
Uh-huh.
Just curious what schools you think they attended and if they were taught financial literacy in their schools.
I don't know what schools they attended. However, I have just kind of done a little bit of like LinkedIn research. They all turned out well. They're all doing good for themselves. They all have high powered jobs. So I would say that just having that experience was a stepping stone into a lifestyle, or at least a lifestyle recognition, recognizing that again you can become your own money manager. So they, from what I can see, the others have done well for themselves. And I don't know if that's credited to how they started, or if that's just credited to the type of parenting that they had. They were Caucasian and Asian children. And so they may have done well regardless, just because of parenting. But for me, I know I needed that additional push because in my hood, that didn't exist. There was no financial literacy training or education whatsoever.
So I hear you saying access and opportunity is
Oh, absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely. Access, opportunity. Um, the truth of the matter is that a lot of times we look down on people for their circumstances,
Mhm.
and we think about the choices they make, but we don't correlate access and opportunity
Mhm.
when it comes to choices that were made. Some people didn't know that they had the choice to do anything other than, some people were, there are people who were pushed into the worst circumstances,
Yeah, yeah.
and we talk about, oh, well, he shouldn't have. Oh, well, she shouldn't have. Oh, well, it's their fault that they're in prison, or it's their fault that they're on, and it's not true.
Right.
There really is a great divide amongst the haves and the have-nots. And so sometimes people choices um, were forced on them. It wasn't their own choice. It wasn't, they didn't have 100%, they didn't have 100% of a decision-making power, or at least they didn't know that they did.
Mhm.
And I really believe that a lot of that ties back into money. A lot of people's worst circumstances, worst decisions, the worst decision a lot of people have ever made is tied back to them wanting to either earn some money, make some money, find some money, get some money.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how did your village educate and equip you with financial knowledge?
So here's the deal, money wasn't talked about in my family.
Mm.
I just, my grandparents were old Southern Black people who migrated from down south. Money was a secret. And I think that happens in a lot of African American households, right? Probably, especially in the 70s, the 80s. Money wasn't something that we talked about at the dinner table. We knew two things. We knew my grandfather got up and worked every day, and we knew the lights were on.
Yeah.
That was it. He kept the bills paid. We didn't know how. We knew he left, early in the morning. We knew he came back in the evening. I didn't have a father. So, and my mother spent so much time looking for the money that she didn't have time to sit down and talk to us about the money. So it was like when I got on TV, that was like we hit the jackpot, because I was at 9, 10, 11 years old. I was making $80 an hour. So from coming from nothing, now all of a sudden we have this influx of money coming in faster than my mom can count it. Now we're just spending. So we were active spenders, but we were passive savers.
Mhm.
And I still see that amongst our people today. We get a little bit of money and it's whoop, straight to shop. We're right to here we go. We're Vegas bound. Couple $100 in our pocket, couple $1,000 in our pocket. Now we're vacationing. Now we're shopping. Now we're getting lashes. Now we're getting our hair done. So even back then, my mom, she was an active spender, but she was a passive saver. So my immediate village didn't talk about money,
Mm.
right? But I also contribute, a part of my village was that news station.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, that was my tribe. That was the people that I was around, and they talked about money all the time. Wealthy people talk about money all the time, all the time. um so it was like I said, I lived in those dual worlds. I lived in a world where 401ks were being tossed out, talked about at lunch, and then I go home and we didn't even talk about a checking or a savings account.
Mhm.
So a lot of it was me doing my own research, because I just believe where there's a will, there's a way.
Mhm. Absolutely. Thank you. So I'm going to move us to our second set of questions. And that first one is, what inspired your career in finance?
That's a good one. So originally, my goal was to be a journalist. I went to San Francisco State for journalism. I was all gung ho about, being a journalist, and I was going to be a writer, and I was going to do this, and I was going to do that. But after college, now I'm married, I have a baby, I need some money. And so instead of going into journalism, I went to work for a newspaper to work my way up to reporter status. But I was actually in the advertising department. I'm looking at the room that I want to get in. So I was in advertising. I hated it. Um, and I moved to Tracy, California. I moved to Tracy, and I started seeing that there was a need for people that look like me to find employment. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna work and start an employment agency. So I did my research, took some classes, got some certifications, blah, blah, blah. And I started owning and operating an employment agency, which also led me to start writing columns in the newspaper. So I had all these things going on. Now I'm in journalism. I'm running a staffing agency. Things are going well for me. And my grandparents moved to Tracy, and they were up in age. And I was managing all my businesses and dealing with them. And my grandfather started getting ill, and he started having me take over his finances little by little. And I'm looking at things going, wait a minute, I thought they had money, and they didn't. And I kept pressing him about his life insurance. Do you have life insurance? Oh yeah, I have life insurance. Where is it? Don't worry about it. It's in a drawer by my bed. When I die, you go get the little green card. I'll be fine. You'll be fine. You'll be able to pay for my funeral. He dies. I go to the drawer. I get the green card. There is a life insurance card. I call the 1-800 number. The lady tells me, your grandfather bought what we call a decreasing term. And every year that term decrease, decrease, decrease. We charge him the same amount of premium every month, even though the term's getting smaller and smaller until it became zero. So he doesn't have coverage. And I was like, who would sell that to an, like, who would do? And I said, well, when did he buy it? Well, he bought it in 1979. And I'm like, so when did it expire? Oh, it expired in 1995. We're in the 2000s. And I'm like, who would do that? And so there was no money for the funeral. The family didn't come together the way we thought the family would come together. And then I started reevaluating my own stuff. Like, well, wait a minute, what do I have? I'm running this big corporation. I'm taking pictures. I'm all in the newspaper. What are we doing? What do our finances really look like? And I sat down with my husband to kind of evaluate my net worth and his insurance plan from his job, because he's like, oh, I got us covered. And it was like, you got to die in an accident or you're not really covered. You can't have alcohol in your system. And I'm like, my husband likes to have a beer every now and then. So technically we don't have anything. And so I'm starting to think, how many other people that look like me don't have what they think they have, right? So then I'm calling, I'm trying to figure out how the 401k really works. Oh, all my husband's money is in the stock market. Oh, we're losing money now. And I said, you know what? The end. I'm going to sell my staffing agency and I'm going to go into this finance thing. And I'm going to make sure that people who look like me never get the short end of the stick again. And that's been almost 15 years. I took every class I could find. I got every license I could get. And I've dedicated my life to making sure that we understand money and how it works. We understand retirement strategies. We understand insurance strategies. I just wanted to make sure that I was in a position to, one, build a strong financial foundation for myself, my kids, and the kids that they don't yet have, but also how do I pour that into society so that people can stop cheating us? We've been cheated for over 400 years. So I made it my mission to learn the finance game and to build a company and to build a platform where I can make sure that we're no longer getting the short end of the stick.
Absolutely. That was empowering right there, listening to that. Having to go through, like, and I just think you use your, the bad, people always talk about the successes, which are always great. That you
Right.
get to get in them, celebrate for a moment, but it's those experiences like you just described, where you going through all these different emotions. You're angry, you mad, you sad, but on the other end, you come out better. For now, not only are you taken care of, look how many people you've put on from you deciding to go into that work. So
yes, yeah, and I'm happy about the choice. My husband, he was like, "What are you doing? You're you're just gonna get rid of a business and start from scratch. Like your phone is ringing, you have clients, you have what are you?" And I said, "That's not where my passion lies." And I believe over the years, who you are, you evolve, you change. Your purpose and your passion must align with each other. And so at the time, the work I was doing, I was passionate about, but it wasn't purposeful anymore to me. It didn't make sense. And so I had to make sure that my purpose and my passion aligned perfectly. And so now I'm doing what really makes my heart sing, and I'm helping so many people. Over the years, I've helped thousands of families to really start to secure their financial future. And I do it for nothing. I love it. And I'm happy about making the choice. I don't even think about what I left behind, because sometimes it's not about what you did before. It's not about looking back. It's about looking ahead. And I've just steadily looking ahead, because I know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm doing my work.
That's awesome. So where should one start when first learning about finance?
The first thing people have to do is take inventory, right? A lot of people want to, and I see this all the time. I'm on Facebook and I'm on all the different social media platforms, and I'm just observing a lot of the times. And what I see, especially from my friends, I want to invest in stock, or I want to clean my credit, right? I want to fix my credit. Who fixes credit? Who's the credit repair lady? Who can toss out some names? I'm looking for recommendations. That's not where you start. Where you start is taking inventory, finding out what your assets are, right? I always tell people, list everything you own and value it like you were valuing it for a garage sale. You know, how much is your refrigerator worth? Because that's an asset. You know, all of your tangible items that are paid for are assets. And then your tangible items that aren't paid for are liabilities. So I tell people you need to list all your assets, you need to list all your liabilities, and then you need to minus your liabilities from your assets, right? And then that's how you're going to figure out what your total net worth is. Day one, you need to know, what's my net worth? What am I working with? How much is in my bank account? Right? I have 5,000 in my bank account, but I owe 8,000 on my car. Right? So some people think they have a ton of money, but they owe a ton of money. Your house is a liability until it's paid off, is what people say. Oh, I own property. Well, you do. But it's a liability until you have a zero debt on that house. So people need to find out what their liability is, and then what their true net worth is. How much am I really worth on paper? And then the second thing people need to do is people need to figure out, what's my debt? Who do I owe? Right? Do I owe on a car? How much do I owe on the car? How much interest am I paying? How many months do I have left to pay on that car? Can I pay that car off sooner? And then this third thing people need to do is to make a budget. And you can't really make a budget until you really know what you're spending. So some of the homework that I give to my clients is, I tell them, for the next 10 days, I want you to carry around a little notebook, and every time you spend a penny, write it down. I don't care if you buy a stick of gum, write it down, because you need to know where your money's going. You need to know what your spending habits look like. You need to also know what your fixed bills are. What bills do you have to pay on a monthly basis? My rent is X amount of dollars. And then you need to also know what your income is, right? So your income minus your expenses is really what you're working with, right? So your income minus expenses. I tell people all the time, find out what your income is, find out what your expenses are, so you can see what your true disposable income really is. And then you need to take that disposable income and start paying off some of your debts. That's the beginning of a financial literacy education: budgeting, understanding your money. You also need to sit down with someone. I'm a financial educator. My team and I'm building a team of financial educators. They're all independent. I don't want anybody working for me. I have people working alongside me, because I don't want to be anybody's BOSS. And I don't want anybody feeling like when they work with me, they work at a JOB. I call JOB jail operating as a business.
You right.
Right? Because they tell you when you can go to the bathroom, and they tell you when it's time to eat. So I have a team of financial educators. We're called Team Onyx. And we sit down and we do one-on-one appointments with people. And in those one-on-one appointments with people, we help them determine where they are today. We do what we call a free PFS, personal finance strategy. And in that free 30, 45 minutes, sometime 1 hour personal finance strategy, we figure out exactly where you are today and where you want to be 5, 10, 20, even 30 years from now. Your retirement, I want to know what retirement looks like for people. I like for people to really start. I don't care if you're 20 years old, envision the day where you don't have to report for a job. What does that look like? What do you want to do? How do you want to spend those retirement years? So we sit down with them and we craft strong plan, a strong plan to help them begin the process of building a strong financial literacy foundation, a strong financial foundation. We also do workshops. I'm going to show you our workbooks. We do these workshops online, absolutely free. And we teach people in those workshops, we teach them what a strong financial foundation is supposed to look like. We teach them about estate planning. We teach them how Social Security works. We teach them the different types of plans that are out there, IRAs, 401k, 403bs. People are putting money in plans and don't know how they work. We talk about wealth preservation. We show people how to really get aligned with their finances so that it makes sense for them. So if not sitting with me, I recommend that everybody sees a financial advisor or a financial planner. Just like when you go to the doctor when your body's feeling off, if your money's off, you need to see somebody, right? You need to see the professional. Just like when the car is ticking and you don't know if it's the oil that needs to be changed or if it's the transmission, you go to the mechanic. So if you can't fix your finances by yourself, which most people, they can, but they need some guidance. So if you're one of the people that maybe need some guidance, you need to see a financial professional. It's literally that simple.
Okay, thank you. And then the last question in this set is, how did you educate and equip your children about financial literacy?
I started talking to my kids about money from day one. One thing I didn't want my kids to do was be afraid of money. The other thing I didn't want my kids to do was be overly intrigued by money, right? So you see those people who've never had it. You see the young ladies, and I grew up in the hood, and I grew up with young women who I was making $80 an hour. So I knew what money was, and I'm sitting in the room with people who are talking about saving and growing and investing. So I got it, but my friends didn't. And so the minute they saw a flashy guy with a nice pair of sneakers and a good haircut who offered to buy them a hamburger, they were jumping in the front seat of that car. And so I didn't want that for my kids. I didn't want them to be overly intrigued by a dollar. I wanted them to know that a dollar doesn't hold much power, right? And that you have to control money and not let money control you. So from a very young age, I taught them the importance of saving more than you're spending. If we can just teach that simple concept to young people, the concept of saving, the concept of growing. One of the things I often talk to my kids about when they were younger is interest. You always have to know how much interest you're getting. You have to understand rate of return. So I started teaching my kids at a very young age how to be investors, how to be money savvy, how not to be intrigued, but also how not to be afraid of it, and how to make sure that no matter if it's a single dollar, you've got to make that dollar work for you.
Absolutely. Thank you. So the third set, in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge or the biggest obstacle to providing the African American community with financial literacy?
I think we get in our own way, right? The biggest obstacle is forcing the audience to listen. That's when it comes to Black people, we can be our own worst enemy. Sometimes we're so focused, so laser focused on everything the others are doing to us, that we forget to hone in on the things that we're doing to ourselves, the things that we are not doing for ourselves, right? We're so critical of what the man is doing, what the president's doing, who's going to be the president, and you know what? Some of that, it matters. I mean, I'm not saying that it doesn't matter, right? But what matters most is you doing the work within, right? and you're making sure that you and your household is living in accordance with the way you're supposed to be living in, and also making sure that your foundation is 100% on point. And so the biggest challenge is getting us to sit at the table and recognize that we can be the table, that we can, that we don't have to beat down anybody's doors. If we do the work, if we come together collectively and make sure that we're on point, we can force the others to want to converse with us. And I often feel like we're so we're so laser focused on the wrong thing that we don't earn the respect of the other. They don't even consider us a contender. We are not on the radar. They could care less about us, right? Because we're every other nationality has some strategies in place, right? The Jewish dollar is going to stay in the Jewish community. The Asian dollar stays in the Asian community. The white dollar is everybody's dollar, right? But when it comes to the black dollar, we don't know how to hold on to it. We don't know what to do with it. It doesn't matter what they give us. If they gave us 40 acres and a mule today, we'd be on that mule on our way to Vegas with our hair on and our lashes on, right? We'd run the mule down. He'd break down before he even got. We don't know how to act sometimes, and we don't know what to do with what we have. And so as long as the others know that we're not collectively bargaining, that we don't know our value, that we don't know we are the number one spenders. We spend the most money. The African American dollar is the $1 that everybody reaches for, and we hand it out without a problem. When they gave out the stimulus payments, a lot of people didn't take care of business. They went shopping. We single-handedly reactivated the economy. The black dollar. We reactivated, we went and we Gucci'd out. We're shopped out. But the minute one of us dies, we're passing the offering plate, or we have the GoFundMe. You don't see GoFundMes for anybody but us. So I think the biggest challenge is getting us to come to the table with an open mind and ready to listen and being ready to learn. We have to put ourselves in a situation where if we're reaching out, Erica, you and I, we can reach out, but we need some listeners. We need some open minds. We need some people that want the help. I think more of us have to recognize where we need the help and then want the help. I give out free financial literacy training. I give out free webinars. I could post it to my page 1,000 times a week, and maybe 2 or 3 people would show up. Not charging with the finance, what I'm able to charge because of my license. My license say you can charge a couple $100s an hour. And I said, no, I want to do it free. It's hard to get us to even listen to free. We are our biggest challenge. We are our worst enemies. We have to be ready and willing to do the work required for us to be where we desire to be in the future.
Absolutely. So I heard you talk about the black dollar. I was on a panel last week, and the president of the NAACP in Kenosha was on the panel with me. He talked, and part of why I was on was talking about changing the narrative for African American youth, and not where my jazz came on. Oh, and not and not going with the same story that's been put out about African American kids. And one thing he talked about was circulating the black dollar in the community. So when we do need to spending with our own people so that it does stay in the community.
Exactly. And I'm definitely a proponent of that. I'm also a proponent of people pooling their monies together to bring those businesses into the community so that the dollar can stay in the community, right? Because if the only store in your neighborhood belongs to an Asian or belongs to an East Indian or belongs to a Jewish person, and that is the most convenient store in the neighborhood, then it's easy to see how we don't spend with our own, because it's not as convenient. So we're going to have to figure out how to pool our resources so that we might have to pack up and like they used to do in the 60s and 70s, and they put everybody in the car and drive to that other grocery store or whatever the case is. But yes, we have to figure out a way to start circulating our dollars amongst ourselves and within our own community, because that is definitely one way that we can make sure that generational wealth is guaranteed amongst Black individuals.
Since you that triggered a memory for me from the Cosby Show when
Mhm.
Pam and her friends, remember they were
Yes,
taking
they
the
will.
car and taking the old people to the
Yes.
supermarket. Yeah, that made me think about that. And so that would, I mean, I was my next question is, how do you propose we solve for this? But with that right there, I was thinking we got so many young people. We got all these young people here that, especially with time on their hand now, how do we do that intergenerational connection that they may need to go to the grocery store for the elderly right now because of the pandemic and them being
Right.
vulnerable, right? But I just think when you said that, that made me think about, oh, how do we plug them into opportunities like that?
Yeah, and I think that's something that, maybe a group of us have maybe can collectively discuss, or because I really think that one of the things that we're missing elders, right? We don't have that connection that we used to have. And one day I was thinking about it and I said, you know what, Kendra, you're in your 40s now. Maybe you are the elders. And I was like an aha moment for me, like, because I'm saying, where the mamas at? Where the aunties? Where the and I'm like, excuse me, ma'am, that's you now. But I think that maybe we have to get a group of us to the table to figure out how can we reach these young people, right? Because um, so many of them are lost. So many of them don't know. And I see the disrespect. I see the disrespect for themselves. Like, that's one thing we have to work on before we can start plugging them into doing some of these other things. We may have to come to the table and put together something for our young women, and separately something for our young men, and then maybe something later collectively. Young men and women don't even know how to court each other anymore. They don't know how to date. They don't know how to talk to one another. Young women don't know what they should and shouldn't accept. Like, that's one of the things that I've spent time with my own children, my own daughters, letting them know what you don't go for. You know what I'm saying, right? What you should be expecting, and why it's important for, as women, not to chase. Who's teaching that stuff? I teach my daughters, one, you don't need to date, right? Because for me, I'm different. I just believe you date for marriage. Focus on your education, focus on securing your bag, focus on being the best you can be, learning who you are, learning what you like. I don't even think these young people know what kind of ice cream they like. You know what I mean? They're so busy doing all this other stuff that they've never had a chance to figure out who they really are. They're just going with the status quo. They're Cardi one minute, they're Meg the next minute, they're this rapper the next, and it's like, girl, do you know if you like ketchup on your burger? Like, you.
Mhm.
So before we can like plug them in with some of the bigger things and teach them how to manage money and money marketing skills, I think we need to get them to the table and just break them down all the way and help rebuild them,
Mhm.
and teach them what it means and what it looks like to really be women. And for the men who have, the only men they've ever seen were on the corner with the pants hanging off. So teach them what it means to be a man. um, Bring back some of the skills of the past, and then work on them from the inside out and build them up. And then we can teach the finance aspect and this and that. But I'd be willing to come to the table with a group of strong people and work on that. I really be willing to do that.
Absolutely. So I heard you saying for them to unlearn to learn. Huh?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I even with myself going into the financial industry, I had to unlearn all of the habits of my mother and her mother.
Mhm.
right? The financial habits. My grandmother was very spoiled by my grandfather. She just wrote the checks, honey. She didn't check the bank balance. She just wrote the checks and swiped the card. And, and my grandfather would be sitting at the table, and he'd be completely depressed and distraught. And she'd just be in the kitchen whipping up the dinner, not privy to his sorrows, right? And sitting with him and watching how he was trying to fix that bank account every month. He never said anything to her. One of the things I had to do, I had to unlearn those habits. My mom is a severe shopper. If she sees it, she likes it. I had to unlearn those habits. I had to unlearn those habits, one, to get into this business, but two, to be a real wife to my husband, and to be a better individual for my children. Because I'm like, hey, I don't want my daughters being 18, standing in the financial aid line, trying to figure things out for themselves, because I spent it all in BDs. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes you got to unlearn. You got to throw away everything you thought you knew about a specific topic or situation in order to relearn it the correct way. I had to just completely get rid of the habits of the past. I couldn't shop the way I wanted to. I come from a family where you get a new outfit for every holiday.
Mhm.
4th of July, who has a 4th of July outfit, and so when my kids were little and I'm getting into this business, my mom would say, where's their 4th of July outfit? Where is their Mother's Day dress? Where's their Easter? And I'm like, they got a closet full of clothes. We don't have to give away everything that we work so hard for. It's okay to check your bank account and there be some zeros in there. It's okay to say, I'm saving for a house. Things that the women before me weren't concerned about, I became concerned about. And now it's just natural for my daughters to be concerned. I watch my oldest daughter with her little budget call me before the first, Mom, I paid my rent. Her budget is small, and she doesn't really know I'm the financer. But it's just watching her with good habits, knowing that I'm not going to go out and do that because I have bills to pay. If you teach it correctly, they'll pick it up, and it'll just be ingrained in them.
Okay, thank you. So our last set of questions, we'll start with the first one. Share anything you are doing to help others learn about financial literacy.
So as I talked about earlier, my Team Onyx, we're Team Onyx, ONYX 1000 on Facebook, and on Instagram. I have built a corporation and a corporate structure where I go into the community and I take everyday people and put them in the financial industry. I'm talking nurses, mechanics, pastors, beauticians, people from all walks of life. You want another income? I'm teaching people that multiple streams of income is okay. Doesn't matter that you're a nurse by day. You can also be a financial educator by night. So one of the things I'm doing is I'm going out into the communities, I'm reaching out, I'm bringing people from all walks of life together, helping them to get the licenses they need, connecting them with large insurance carriers, large investment companies, and allowing them to then learn for themselves, build a financial foundation for themselves, and then turn around and duplicate themselves by going out, one, looking for other people who they can train to do the same thing, and then two, offer these financial workshops that we're doing. Go with me into the streets. And when I say in the streets, now it's Zoom. Right? This is the streets. Go with me into the streets. And we offer all of these different webinars. We offer all of these different classes. We do all these different one-on-one meetings. And so one, it's helping for me because I'm only one person. If there are 1,000 of us, my goal is to have 50,000 educators within the next few years, all reaching out, because we're bringing Wall Street to Main Street. I want everyday moms. I want everyday aunties. I want everyday grandmas to understand what's happening in Wall Street. I want them to understand the S&P. I want them to understand, to know what the NASDAQ is. I want them to know about the global indexes. I want them to become their own money managers. And I'm starting by just teaching them the simple principles to building a strong financial foundation. So it's twofold. One, we're bringing people in, getting them the training they need, helping them to get the licenses so that they can have that additional stream of income. And then two, having them go out into the world and go out and market and help bring these people to the table. Because a lot of us, we don't know about investment companies. And guess what? They don't market to us. So as the middleman, I'm going out and I'm getting people and I'm saying, hey, now I'm gonna sit you down with Transamerica. And I'm going to show you how to get the good interest. I'm going to show you what a tax-free retirement plan looks like. So I just want to teach everyday people how to play like the big boys and how to understand money and how to not be afraid of it and how to do it on a completely different level. You can take a little bit of money and turn it into a lot of money with the right education.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you. You're doing a lot, girl. I love
I'm
it.
trying.
Um, have you taken any action to advocate for financial literacy in schools?
So colleges,
Okay.
we're bringing the workshops to HBCUs. We were going to bring the workshops to HBCUs for the 2020-2021 year, and then the pandemic happened. And so now the goal is for the 2021-2022 school year, we're unveiling our workshops through different HBCUs. It'll be an online platform, but we're also going to have educators who show up actually at the schools, sort of in the role of a professor to kind of go over and guide through those workshops and create panels and things of that nature. Another thing I feel is if I'm teaching somebody's mother, if I'm teaching somebody's father, there will come a time where I don't have to be at a school, right? If somebody's mom knows, then their 10-year-old can learn. So we're giving the parents the tools they need and saying, okay, now that you know what to do, here's a curriculum, here's some simple techniques, here's some homework that you can give to your kids and have these open dialogue discussions. So I have a lot of things in the works. I see in my near future, I'm working on a book right now with one of my business partners. I'm thinking of financial literacy games that I want to bring into the universe for elementary age school kids. So I have a lot that I'm working on. 2020 was, for a lot of people, it was a setback, but for me, it gave me time to really plan, plot and plan. Gave me time to plot, plan, and pursue, so that I can present those things in the upcoming year.
So this will be your second book?
This will be my third book, but I'm done with fiction.
Okay.
I'm in a different place in my life. I was going through something where I thought I was happy about fiction, but now I want to educate people. We got enough hee and ha and we got enough story time. We see enough on TV. I want to make sure that this book is specifically an educational tool that people can use and utilize in their everyday lives. I don't have the I'm done with the hee and the ha and the making light of situations and the making fun or trying to capitalize off of people's stories. And now it's time for us to educate more than ever. We need to know some stuff.
Yes.
Now is the time. so 2021, my book will be here very soon, and it will be a tool that people can use to help guide them in their everyday journey of building a solid financial foundation.
We'll make sure to share that on our Facebook page when it comes out.
Yay. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Of course. So are there any other issues that the Black community faces that you've been doing, advocating around?
My platform has just been my strongest platform has been built around financial literacy.
Mhm.
Because like I said earlier, for me, based on my findings, based on my studies, a lot of our issues are centered around money, right? Are centered around us not having that wealth, of us not having that power that comes from wealth. And so when you don't have power, you are put into positions where you don't have access to um, the best legal systems. You know, you don't have access to the best medical systems. You don't have access to having that seat at the table. And so for me, I see a lot. We have a lot going on. There's social injustices. There's all these things that are happening to us. And the honest truth is that those of us who have money are not properly advocating. A lot of the advocating that I see, it's very surface, right? They're not putting their money where their mouth is. They're not the big timers, the millionaires. We have some billionaires, okay? There are some of us who you've seen them. I mean, I can't speak on other people's names, but we have people that are, oh, they're a billionaire. They're running TV studios. They're doing this. They're doing that. When those billionaires and those multimillionaires come to the table and tell Uncle Sam and tell the man and tell whoever needs to be told, we're really not going for this. We're going to shut these movie studios down. We're going to shut these TV stations down. You're not going to see us kick a ball anymore. You're not going to see us dribble anymore. When we really get serious about that, we can make some things happen. So really, a lot of our issues are really what's happening is happening to those of us who don't have. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to see you're not going to see LeBron James' son get snatched out of a car. You know, that's not going to happen by the police. It's not going to happen. It's only the Michaels and the Georges and the Johns that don't have the voice, right? It's only the Breonna Taylors who they don't have a voice. It's happening to those of us who don't have a voice. So I think a lot of our social injustices, a lot of everything that's happening, is happening because we haven't collectively come to the table and forced their hand, right? And really force their hand. So my platform is about financial security, financial prosperity, so that maybe some of us little guys can get to the table and say, look, we're pulling all of our monies out of the bank, right? We're pulling all of our monies out of these 401k plans. Until you do right by us, this is what we're not going to do, right? We're not going to back you here. We're not going to back you there. So I stay in my lane. My lane is teaching people how to make that money work for them. My lane is trying to correlate that to the social injustices. I'm not on the front lines. I'm not marching. My march is in the room with somebody trying to help them fix their money. My march is trying to make sure you have that cash to put your child through college. And if you don't have that cash, let's look for the resources, because I'd rather your daughter be the lawyer, be the judge. We've got to start thinking like that. We can produce the police officers, right? There are so many young men and women in the streets. We want to see change. Let's make the police officers look like us. But we need the finances and the capital to make that stuff happen. We got to get Ray Ray off the corner. We got to get, these young men off the corners. So how can we fund them? How can we make sure that they have the food to eat at night? That they don't have to stand on the street corner to buy bread and milk and eggs for their mom. Those are the things that I'm thinking about. What can I do to get them off the street? What can I do to make sure they never have a record? What can I do to help them get to college? What can I do to make sure that if they do want to be a police officer, they're not looked at negatively? What can I do to make sure that these young, pretty African queens don't have to twerk, don't have to be naked, and instead they can? Those are our doctors and our lawyers. Every time I see them on Facebook and I see them and they're out there and they're sticking out their tongues and I just keep thinking, that could be my doctor. That could be, the lawyer. That could be the parole officer. That could be a police officer. Those are the things I want to fix. How do we get to them?
Absolutely. So I'm curious, this is not part of my questions, but you have me thinking. Um, for those that don't have the capital, that don't have the money, how can we leverage our community cultural wealth to help us get in those positions so that we have access and opportunity?
I think we have to, one, start figuring out who our community leaders really are, right? Once we know who the community leaders really are, now it's about getting with those community leaders to sit down and have a dialogue and figure out where we fit in. How can we get them to the table first so that we can open up that dialogue and come up with programming, come up with ideas. There are grants, there is money available, right? The government has tons of money out there. We just have to know, how do we get to the table with the right persons or the right people to find out what each individual community's needs are, right? And then work on coming up with a platform, work on coming up with a plan so that we can have access to the things that we have access to. It can't be done unless we, one, identify the problem for each individual community. Because the needs of San Francisco may be a little slightly different from the needs of Oakland, right? Or the needs of West Oakland might be different from the needs in East Oakland, or what have you. So we have to find out who's in charge, who are we looking to in these areas, who's doing what, and then collectively come to the table and say, let's identify the need, and then as a group, let's come up with individualized solutions. And maybe it's a one size fit all solution just in Northern California. I don't know. These are just ideas that I have, but the first step for me is, who do I talk to and how do I get to the table? But that's something me and you can work on.
I'm down. I'm always willing to for me, I look at institutions, and I heard you say we look at our people, our young people in the street, and those are police officers, they're doctors and they're lawyers.
Right.
Being in education for 30 years, a lot of times we said we're going to go in and we're going to change it from the inside out.
Yeah.
Gung ho, and we get in there and we're confronted with toxic policies,
Yep.
toxic procedures, a lot of times toxic behaviors because of the policies and the procedures.
Exactly.
When you bring in professional development on on equity or just whatever the topic is, people learn it, but because those policies and procedures are in place,
right,
the institution doesn't change because
exactly
that hasn't changed. And so
yeah,
I part of me is this, let's separate, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like, and let's separate and create a whole new system for ourselves, which
right.
People are scared of that. I'm revolutionary. I'm like, hey, nothing might be better than this. When I'm walking out my house and every block I go down, there's an encampment. I don't even call them encampments. They're cities now, right?
Wow.
And I just feel like we could create our own, and most people are like, we should separate, and they want to keep the same system. But this system perpetuates oppression. And so even if it was Black people in those positions, they would still be oppressing those that are underneath them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, yeah. So I just think about, I'm on this, it's a Facebook page about investing and finance and all of that. I'll share it with you.
Okay.
And he's been trying to encourage us to, join in the conversation more. And I'm like, but you're still, for me, I'm a historian, and I'm social justice all the way down the road. And for me, it's like, okay, but if we right now, with what I'm seeing, okay, I do like to learn about that stuff. But
right.
At the same time, you're telling me if we separate, we're going to keep the same capitalistic system. That's the problem with America now.
Right.
Neoliberalism, which
right.
I know we need money. We need money. That's what makes the world go round. But we also bring value to the money. And
right.
If we said that the money had no more value, it wouldn't have no more value.
Well, that's where I am. I'm like, we determine the value of the money. Like I said, we are the spenders, right? We're the ones who keep the economy properly circulating. And I'm like you, if we said this is what we're collectively not going to do, because there was I think at some point earlier in the year, people were like, okay, the blackout day is this day, the blackout day is that day. It was so hard to figure out, well, who's blackout day, are we following? And what day is it really? We need organization. We need leadership. Like if we really had real leadership and we said, hey, on, Thanksgiving, we're not spending Black Friday, we're not spending one red nickel, you know, and really stuck to it.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, we could change some things.
Mhm.
And if we said we're not Christmas shopping, we're not holiday shopping at all, we're not spending $1, we're not spending one penny from November the 27th all the way to January 1st. I'm telling you, somebody would want to talk to somebody. It would be a whole problem if Black people, really came to the table, really got revolutionary and said, well, this is how we're gonna make some noise. We're gonna make some noise with this dollar. We're gonna make some noise by being silent on your websites. We're gonna make some noise by not shopping, by not spending, by not. Oh man, I'm telling you, we could really change some things. But the question is, how do we make that
Well, see,
happen?
the other thing, when the blackout day, okay, I participated, but my thing is, I look at the Montgomery bus boycott.
Yeah,
The reason why it was effective is because it went for over a year. They didn't give up, and so
that's what I'm saying.
one
One day ain't enough.
but I
Yeah,
could
that's
have
why I
bought
said
last night. I could have bought everything the day before, and then this day I'm just not going to spend no money. I don't think that's really impacting anything.
we would have to not shop November and December
Exactly.
and let them see what it looks like if we stop activating the economy. I look at I just look at our trends, and how we follow the trends and what we're spending our money on. And I just look at it and I say, can you imagine if we just didn't purchase any, Nike for, X amount of time, or if we just didn't buy this or that for X, oh my goodness, we could really make a difference. But who's bold enough to do it is the real question.
And then you have, like we said, the people who will tell you they're with it, but they'll buy Christmas gifts in October and
Right,
give them out. But then November and December, which will still be effective. But I know
right,
you bought them, so it kind of defeats the purpose. The purpose is
right,
we didn't want to give them any money, regardless
right.
if it was prior to that or after. So I think I like that your suggestion. So my last question: have you created any resources to counteract oppression? And I know you. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the resources I've created was the ability for people um, to jump into a business or into an industry, a multi-trillion dollar industry that doesn't necessarily welcome people of color. I mean, if you go to Wall Street on any day where they're ringing the bell or where something's going on, the majority of the people in the room are white middle-aged men. And so I'm trying to create the ability for, an 18-year-old African American woman or an 18-year-old African American young man, as long as they're 18 and over, I'm trying to create the ability for them to come into a multi-trillion dollar industry, learn everything they can learn, get those licenses, and have that direct connection with these large investment and insurance companies. You cannot walk off the streets and go to, say, a Transamerica or go to a Nationwide and say, hey, how you doing? I want to work for you, or I want to partner with you, not work for you. I want to partner with you. I have no capital. I have nothing but my name, and this one little piece of paper that the state gave me, and they're gonna laugh, right? There's not even an office for you to go to even connect in that way. Or they're going to say, well, you could be the janitor, you can be a secretary, or you can be, but here I'm creating a way for the average Joe to come into a multi-trillion dollar industry, be backed by a multi-billion dollar company, and make a 6 or 7 figure income without having to report to an office. I don't require any of the independent agents to come to my offices. A lot of what we do online, our training, but my goal is to teach people how to build systems,
Mhm.
build businesses, right? And to leverage the extra stream of income that they're making to then go out into the world and make other things happen, right? If your dream is to build a string of beauty salons, well, come here, make this money, make this extra stream of income, now you can finance yourself. I want people to be able to finance themselves to wealth, right? Finance yourself. You may not be able to do that at your regular job because your regular job is going to pay you X amount of dollars per hour. Well, here, the insurance carriers, the investment companies, they're saying, we're not going to pay you X amount of dollars per hour. We're going to pay you based on the amount of applications you turn in or the amount of people you bring our way. And we're going to pay you hefty amounts. You know, we're going to pay you $1,200, $3,000 for this one application. So now I have people who are going out, they're doing 10 applications in a week, and now they're making 3,000 times 10. Now you've made $30,000. Now you have the money to put down on that house that you've been dreaming of. So I'm creating a system by way of which people who normally couldn't get their foot in the door can now have access to many open doors.
Thank you. Woo, girl, you're doing a lot, Miss.
So if anybody is in need of work, if anybody's willing to, you know, you have to be able to, they are slightly still strict in the financial industry. You cannot have a felony background record within the past 10 years. You have to be willing to be licensed, fingerprint, live scan, fingerprinted, background checked, your background run through the Department of Justice. But with that being said, once we get them through that bit of red tape, we can really get them processed, connected with carriers, connected with investment companies, get them licensed, trained, financially educated, and teach them how to duplicate themselves and do it all over again and teach other people how to do the same. So
I love it. So empowering. So
thank you. Thank you.
I want to highlight a couple of the pearls. I actually have a lot, so I'm not going to share all of them. I'll share that in an email.
Okay.
I'm going to just lift up some of the stuff I heard you say.
Okay.
One of the most important things is understanding your money by budgeting.
Yes.
I heard you say talk to your children about money from the start. If you teach your children correctly, they will learn it. I heard you say you have to control money. Don't let it control you. Save more than you spend. I heard you say unlearn to learn. Get out of your own way. Get to the table with an open mind. Everyday people should know about Wall Street and all things finance. And then the last one is we need to create more pipelines into the financial industry.
Yep, absolutely.
I really appreciate you coming on and just sharing your perspective and your experience with our audience. And if there's one last thing or one last tip that you want to share with the audience, the last voice they hear will be yours.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure that if people take away nothing else from today, I want you to take away the fact that your money and your financial future is totally up to you. Nobody's going to be more concerned about your financial health, your financial well-being, your financial wealth, other than you. You have to make sure that at the end of the day, you take charge of your finances. You take charge of your financial foundation, and that you work hard on building a strong financial foundation, and that you work hard to make sure that generational wealth is a thing. And you make sure that you're putting some processes and some plans in place so that your generations behind you can have a little bit of an easier time than you've had. So with that being said, if you want to contact me via email, my email address is info, that's info, the number 4, Kendra L. Willis at gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook at Team Onyx, ONYX 1000. And, you know, I just thank you for having me here today. I've enjoyed my time, and I'm hoping that we've at least helped one individual on today.
Absolutely. Thank you.